Hi there, all my wood turning friends from the internet. I love my chucks, but sometimes you've got to find a different solution, because if you can't hold it on the lathe, you can't turn it. So today I wanted to describe techniques on friction chucking and jam chucking that'll get you out of a bind many a time. I'm going to make a distinction between friction chucks and jam chucks, although for many wood turners they're interchangeable and maybe terminology is not that important, but I'm going to describe the two. Friction chuck to me is when you're using a device to hold a piece between centers, such as this drive plate, which I'll also use on a vacuum chuck, but you know, it's simply a flat plate that I can hold any number of turnings against. Flat against it, as long as it's got a flat rim. That works out great. And that's just one example of a friction chuck. Another example of a friction chuck is where you have a large block or a small block, depending on the size of your bowl, where the surface of it conforms to the inside of a bowl.
The contour on your friction chuck should match the bowl it's fitting in, and one way to do that's with this contour gouge, but you can also just do it by eye if that's easier for you.
You put some material, it might be a piece of scrap of leather, or it could be some shelf liner. You hold that in your chuck and then you put the bowl on it and bring it up. Now that's to be distinguished from jam chucks that hold something only on one side, similar to a scroll chuck. Bad boy up here. So bring up the tailstock. Put a little bit of pressure on it. And I said that jam chucking is where you normally hold it on one side and it doesn't have to be secured on the other. I'm going to distinguish between another chucking method, and that's using a mandrel, such as what I used in my recent pillbox video. I'll have a link to that above. And they can be different sizes. And I've also got a link above to how to turn a wood turning mandrel. Mandrel basically is a shaft that goes into a hole. One that you're probably mostly familiar with is a pin mandrel. Okay, I figure I need to take this down about 1/4 of an inch or so, maybe a little bit more. And so I've measured this with calipers, and we're going to just mark that on here. Okay, and I like that fit good. All right, so we're going to take this stubby taper out like that. We're going to put that in the Nova live center. That simply fits in there, that Morse taper. Now put it in the tailstock, and I'm just going to snug it up just enough to hold it. There's lots of ways to solve problems, which is one of the things that, to me, that makes wood turning kind of fun. Got it. Okay. We'll hold it.
I think one of the most common examples of a jam chuck is when we reverse the bottom of a box to finish the bottom. Here I'm using a spindle scrap. I'm using an inside-out tool to hollow it out the depth of the tenon, and I'm just moving it back and forth. When I finish cleaning it out, I want to make sure I've got a nice, even, parallel walls for that tenon to pop into. This is not a super strong hole, but you got to be careful. Now overshot the diameter a bit, so I'm using some paper towel to tighten it up. And it was still a bit loose, so here's another technique. I spray a little water on it. That moisture on the fibers will swell them temporarily to give you a pretty decent hold, and then I just remove the scrap. And here I am using that hole to finish the bottom of this box. For reversing a box, your best hole is going to be a recess, not a overfit tenon like this, which is going to be a weaker hold. I keep blocks of 2x4 ready for this sort of thing. I like to have these ready so I don't need to worry about cutting up a 2x4 or cutting a block round when I need it. Only touching this one side, otherwise you're liable to have it catch. And quits, and then we're going to come straight down here. Oh, this is spot on. Pine is especially good for this because it's soft, so it's fairly forgiving. Oh yeah, it runs very true. Real happy with that. Now, just like any other jam chucking, you're going to sneak up on it. I'm going to use a skew on its side to get a little cleaner cut. I had to go maybe a 1/16 of an inch, 30/2 of an inch deeper, and I think that'll do it. And that runs true enough. I'm happy with that. Light cuts. Whoa. Yeah, that happens. No problem. We're just going to put a little tongue hole on it. It's especially important on these bells to center them for drilling for the handle, because if they don't go straight up and down, right down to the middle, they just don't look right. It's on there. Now I'm going to finish the outside. Scraper mode. Jam chucking this requires tapering the walls down 1.5 degrees, similar to a Morse taper, and it makes for a very, very strong hold. In this case, I'm hollowing out the top of this rook box that I'd already done the crenellation, so I didn't have any way of chucking it. So again, this is a good solution to this turning situation. And it makes, as I've shown you, a very, very strong hold. I smooth the edge off, I hollow it, I texture the inside. It runs very, very true. It doesn't mar the outside of the box. And here's how I pop it off. You drill a hole in advance to the chuck and you can just tap it out. Acorn boxes are fun, and again, I'm doing the base reverse so I can finish off the bottom. And the beauty of this, I'm using pine that's in spindle orientation, so the fibers all run in the same direction. Makes for a fairly strong hold that doesn't mar the surface, and that's the main thing. Now in this case, I'm having a difficult time pulling it off, so let me show you how I solve that problem when you get one that's too tight. I'm going to take a thin parting tool and make a part just a little bit, maybe a 1/16, 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. Then I can go down, stick the parting tool with the lathe off, of course, and wedge it down in there and kind of wedge it a little bit like I was opening up a can of paint. And sometimes, like in this case, it's breaking off. I've got to go around and keep trying on other edges. But you've got wood on wood instead of metal on wood, so it doesn't damage the the edge of the piece you're turning at all. So this is a great technique. Not gonna go very deep. Tiny little tape bottom. So, close. Okay, I put the bottom onto the jam chuck made out of the scrap. I've used a little painter's tape to hold it, and notice we do wrap it where it's the leftover edge is coming toward us so it doesn't come apart. Well, that tape didn't want to hold from us. Bringing it to us like this. Now you can make the jam chuck out of, could be MDF, could be plywood. In this case, we're actually using another roughed out bowl blank as a jam chuck, and I'm using my beating and parting tool to come in. Again, similar to that rook box, I'm coming in at 1.5 degrees, a slight taper, similar to a Morse taper. In this case, I didn't quite get it right. When I went back to adjust it, it was a little too loose, so I tightened it by just continuing on that same angle. And so when I overshot it and continued on the same angle, I was able to get it just right, and then just tap it in. This beating and parting tool works good for this. I could use a skew on the side. This is an extremely strong fit on a bowl with that slight taper. The pieces almost become like one. They're so tight, sometimes they're difficult to remove. In this case, I'm tapping it in to make it pop into place. And the bowl has to be true to the surface. To release it, generally all you have to do is tap on the chuck and it flexes. Let me show you another way how you can remove these bowls if tapping doesn't work for you. As long as you've got a hole in the bottom of your jam chuck, sometimes compressed air will pop it out, whereas you wouldn't want to hit a rod down there and damage the inside of a bowl. So it's sometimes just goosing it with a little compressed air will take care of it. We've talked about two kinds of jam chucks. The one we do for a box is typically where the jam chuck has parallel walls to match the tenon on the bottom of the box, typically with parallel walls, and it can be a good hold, but it's not being clamped by steel jaws, so you do have to take light cuts, be careful, use tailstock as often as possible, for as long as possible. But the second type, the one where you're typically doing a bowl where you're able to recess, make that recess at a 1.5 degree angle, it makes for an extremely strong hole for a bowl. So as I've described throughout the video, some of the benefits of these jam chucks are they don't mar the wood, they run true. They're extremely versatile in that you can accommodate lots of chucking challenges that you couldn't deal with chuck jaws because they wouldn't work, you don't have the right size. And as you can see, for the ones that have the Morse taper slant on them a little bit, that 1.5 degree slope, they can be extremely strong. I'd like to hear from some of you visitors. If you feel like this is going to be helpful to you, leave a comment below. Y'all stay safe and come on back here. Stay safe.